So welcome everybody to the fourth session of the day 2 of the 13th edition of the Bengal Chambers Business IT Conclave. A very interesting session, Globalization 4.0. We have experts here, Mr. Shubho Shamanto, Special Invitee IT Committee of the Bengal Chamber. He is the former chairperson of the Bengal Chambers IT Committee. Lead speaker is Mr. Pedro Joardo, President of CINT. He is joining us from Poland, right, Mr. Joardo? Portugal, sorry. Mr. Shubroto Bhattacharya, Director, PharmaQuant, and Professor Dr. Abhirup Sarkar, former Professor of Economics, Indian Statistical Institute, and Chairman, 5th Finance Commission, West Bengal. With this, we will start the session with a short video from our Government of West Bengal's IT and E, that is Information and Technology Electronics initiatives.
West Bengal Electronics Industry Development Corporation Limited, popularly known as WEBEL, has successfully changed the IT scenario in Bengal. Bengal today is a preferred IT destination. To WEBEL, the state also boasts of 18 ready-to-use modern IT spaces. With a waiting list of investors along with 4 additional IT parks that are near completion. Spread across 200 acres, Eastern India's most advanced IT destination, Silicon Valley Tech Hub, is rising as an epicenter of technology, with available land being booked up fast. WEBEL gave rise to various burgeoning IT hubs with substantial resources like green building offices with zero power cut and plug-and-play modules. FinTech Hub in Newtown, the future of financial services, is another area of prime focus. Major emphasis is given to blockchains, hackathons, and many more. WEBEL Fujisoft Vara having state-of-the-art 3D printing technology. The Cybersecurity Center of Excellence has been announced as the winner by DSCI Excellence Awards 2020 for security awareness and data protection. The development of Self-Scan, a government-trusted app-based scanning technology where one can securely scan private documents. WEBEL Animation Academy is taking the world of animation to a new dimension. WEBEL Mediatronics Division's ongoing projects on ambient noise level monitoring system. Additionally, WEBEL Digital Academy is imparting IT training across rural Bengal. WEBEL has also concentrated on initiatives of G2G and G2C under West Bengal's e-governance project. The issue of Swasthya cards in Bengal has added to the glory. Even for IT professionals returning to Bengal due to the COVID-19 scenario, the Karma Bhumi project has been offering employment opportunities through a dedicated web portal. Thus, WEBEL has helped skyrocket the employment rate in the state's IT sector. Bengal is strategically located and well connected with China, Taiwan, Japan, Dubai, etc. Thereby, Asia's largest business hubs are well accessible to the state. WEBEL also caters to the IT needs of the extended parts of eastern India. West Bengal is the IT gateway of India. The state is phenomenally conducive to business, having airports and riverine ports, well-developed roadways and railways, with further infrastructural development in full swing. 100% Business Reform Action Plan, compliant with a high rank in the Ease of Doing Business Index. Bengal has changed the face of trade. The rise of Bengal in the IT and E sector has also attracted eminent delegates from Taiwan to visit Webel's EMC and hardware parks, kick-starting further growth in Bengal with emerging technology.
Thank you once again for joining us. With this, I would request Mr. Shamonto, please take the session forward.
Thank you, Angana. Thank you, Angana. Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank Mr. Pedro Giordao, Mr. Subroto Bhattacharya, and Professor Obhirup Sarkar for taking time off from their busy schedule to be with us today. I would also like to thank the audience for joining us, and special thanks to Bengal Chamber for picking up such a relevant topic for today. So our discussion will help us understand the economic perspective, the technology perspective, and the business opportunities that globalization is creating for us. Now, our session will start with a discussion by Mr. Jodao, followed by Mr. Bhattacharya and Dr. Sarkar giving their point of view, and then followed by that, we'll have a Q&A. We'll try to restrict the overall session to 45 minutes, and I'll try to accommodate the questions by the audience also within this time. So this is a very, very relevant topic for today. Actually, I don't know when globalization started, whether it was when Gautam Buddha walked the globe to spread his knowledge, or whether when Huan San came to India. But globalization is really accelerating today with all the advancement in technology. Countries are getting more connected by trades and services, by capital investment across borders, and by data movement. Now, if we take the example of the FANG companies, it is just moving data and globalizing. So I'll be very interested to hear the point of view of our panelists today. So I'll request Mr. Jodao to share his views. So welcome, Mr. Jodao. Request you to take over and talk about your point of view on this topic on globalization. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Samantha. Well, I have to thank you, and I say this very, very sincerely. Thank you for the invitation from the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It is my pleasure and my honor to be here, and I will try to provide some thoughts about this topic. And I must congratulate the person, I don't know who that person was, who devised this expression, Globalization 4.0. Because actually it is very intelligent to match both. Because globalization was not created, was not decided, it's not about the ideology. Nobody created globalization, and globalization will never end. We cannot stop globalization because globalization is about connectivity. And when we have connectivity on a global scale, we cannot stop the interactions and the changes all over the world. You see, we began globalization many hundreds of years ago. And you see, Marco Polo took 4 years to go from Venice in present Italy to China. I can cover the same distance right now in a plane in 11 hours. And we developed communications by land, then by sea, then by air, and now immaterially by telecommunications, and with this blending of computing power and telecommunications that is actually internet. So when we increase connectivity around the world, we are necessarily speeding up globalization, making it deeper, not shallower. So we cannot stop. And you see, right now, what do we see? We see that the 4.0 or 4.0, as you wish, the fourth industrial revolution, creating more connectivity. You see, the first industrial revolution in the 18th century was important because it was based on the steam engine, and it led to a massive growth in agricultural production. Then later, electricity led to mass production and basically an increase in industrial output. Much more recently, the third industrial revolution came from electronics, digital, and automation. And now this is a completely new level after the third industrial revolution, because 4.0 is something different structurally. There is a singularity in this transformation, because now it is about big data, it is about mobile computer, it is about cloud, it is about hyper-fast broadband, and it is more and more over the next few years and decades, it's about IoT and it's about artificial intelligence. And this changes a lot. It's not a mere increase in connectivity. No, new phenomena will happen. And that translates also in the economy and in business. And that's my main angle for this brief intervention. So what can we see right now? 2/3 of mankind, 2/3 of men around the world are connected with the internet. There are over 6 billion smartphones. Just in sub-Saharan Africa, there are more than 5 million smartphones. And you can see literally these things are like another, and it's reality. I see people in the middle of savannah with their goats and so on. They are small agricultural production and so on, but they are far from civilization. But through their smartphones, they are negotiating when they will deliver their products, where, at what prices, and so on, and they deliver. They are in the middle of savannah. They are far from civilization as we consider it, but they are connected to the world, and they are making e-commerce a business in the middle of Africa. And so we can see this all over the world in civilized or less civilized, less developed areas. And I think that this changes the global economy. Globalization means interchange and changes around the world. Because when people in companies and economies begin interacting, they begin exchanging trade, ideas, food recipes, religions, technology, science, information, and so on. And we cannot stop that. So right now, as globalization 4.0, we see basically a new economy. There is globalization and a different thing that is free trade. Free trade and globalization are different things, but one potential increases the potential of globalization. So free trade even brings more higher potential for globalization impact on the economy and on business. Because free trade was decided by man. Globalization was not created by anybody, and we cannot stop it. So we have a new economy that has been, because these new technologies are becoming extremely cheap. They are not only extremely cheap, but available rapidly after they are created. Usually when they are created, they are expensive, but rapidly there are economies of scale, and they begin having a very accessible price. So there is not that fear of digital gap between advanced countries and developing countries. Actually, it does not exist, or basically it does not exist, because these technologies become affordable very rapidly. That's why we see smartphones and computers and mobile computer, and we see Zoom. We are in a Zoom session. Any person with a smartphone can access this Zoom session from the middle of Africa or the Amazon jungle in South America. So these are the signs of times coming from globalization 4.0. This means that with free trade, combining this with free trade, we see that any or most of companies, even small companies that could not have an international strategy, growth strategy, even 20 years ago, now even a small country, even a small company can have a global business strategy, global business expansion strategy. Because size actually does not matter, because 20 years ago, it was extremely expensive to negotiate internationally. A phone call was extremely expensive. International fax was extremely expensive. It was a fortune to have a video conferencing session such as the one we are having now. And how much does that cost right now? Basically zero. Right now, even a small company has access to tools for international business that were accessible only to various big companies 20 years ago. This means, and there is no surprise that developing countries, and which, by the way, most of them are also emerging economies, are growing economically. And that is natural, and that is inevitable. And frankly, I see that with the biggest sympathy you can imagine, because now people that were limited in the recent past with their innovation capacity, with their innovation power, with their capacity to go into many new markets and innovate commercially, technologically, and so on. This is basically at their footsteps. This is a new world. Now it is about remote work, about remote education, remote medicine. We are entering a new era. And I'm not speaking even about virtual reality or augmented reality, about virtual twins and the impact that can have in many sectors, or even in 3D printing in another continent. But all this is a new world for business. And it is no surprise that, for instance, if I give you the example of the period between the end of 2008 and the end of 2019, before the pandemic, in this span of 11 years, you see that the economy of the European Union grew 13%. The economy in same period, the economy of the United States grew 22%. The economy of the developing Asia, that means all Asian countries excluding Japan, grew 112%. The economy of India grew 113%. The economy of China, 122%. So compare the growth in developing countries and in the emerging countries and the growth in advanced countries. It's not just a matter that the emerging and developing countries are growing from a lower base. I know that, but that is not only the case. They are gaining ground. Since 2008, the developing countries already represent more than half of the world economy. So this is a new world, and I think that this is the best era for especially for small and medium-sized companies in developing countries to open up to the world with imagination, with courage, boldly, and in a very intelligent way. But I think, and I repeat that with a very, very big sympathy, because I see incredible potential, incredible innovators in developing countries. And many times I'm speaking from Europe, and many times I think, wow, if you were in Europe, oh my God, you will do 20 times more than you are doing. But the problem is that right now we can do almost the same things wherever we are. So this is basically what I was going to focus on these 10 minutes that were allocated to me. So just to wrap up, the four Greek countries, so Brazil, Russia, India, and China, 20 years ago represented half the economy of the G7, half. Right now, the same four countries represent twice the double of the economy of the G7. So this means a lot. This is the new world. And finally, Asia, within the next 8-9 years, will add up to the world middle class, 1 billion new middle class members. That means a huge potential, a huge market, not only inside Asia, but also inside the world. So thank you very much for your patience here and your attention in these minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jodo. That's very informative. Thank you so much. Just for your information, I was checking the net some time back to find out who coined the term globalization 4.0. I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but I read that it was named in the World Economic Forum in Davos some time back, actually. That's where they coined the term. I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but that's what I heard. Now, there's one question from the audience, and I had the same question too. What do you think is the impact of government regulations on globalization 4.0? Do you think the regulations governments are trying to make, sometimes it's knee-jerk, sometimes it's a very thought-through that's impacting globalization pace? Or what's your point of view on that?
Well, let me answer in three parts, because I don't know exactly which is the part that raises the doubt. On what concerns globalization per se, I think that governments cannot stop it. So let's forget about trying to stop globalization. It is unstoppable, because globalization is about connectivity. We cannot destroy our connectivities. We will not abolish the internet. We will not stop our skies and abolish our bridges and our railways. Everything that creates connectivity creates globalization. So we are not going to destroy that. So it is impossible to stop globalization. I'm not concerned 4.0. The fourth industrial revolution, because that's what it stands for, it's also unstoppable. Let me tell you one thing. I'm very afraid of some lack of conscience among all of us connected to these issues about some of the consequences, because they are not all positive, that come from 4.0 technologies. For instance, I think that most people have no idea what will happen in the negative side with IoT. You see, we have right now 14 billion people connected to the internet. No, sorry, 5 billion people connected to the internet. But we already have triple that, 4.4 billion devices connected to the internet. So the Internet of Things. So, and this number of devices connected to the internet will grow in the next 5 years to maybe around 20 billion. So the internet was, until recently, something that connected people. But more and more, as time goes by, more and more it will be, internet will be that strange thing that connects devices around the world. In our home, around the world. That means a massive amount of data. So good food for artificial intelligence. But I don't think that anyone is concerned about the dangers that also come from that. Because anything that is connected to the internet, and we all know that, can be hacked, can be sabotaged. And what will happen if I already have in my home? It's the water heater and this and that, several things connected. Okay, it's very, very modern and very beautiful that I'm in the beach and I can see what is the temperature in my water heater at home. Oh, wow, that's so funny. The problem is that what if someone hacks this and tries to blow up my water heater, disabling, for instance, the temperature control and so on? What happens if I have my car and the car is connected, and it is very good, because if I get a technical problem in my car in a remote road, the car is connected, and I send a signal to the factory, and from another country they test the car, they say it's this problem, no problem, we will reset this and that, the car is working again. Oh, fine. The problem is that if that is connected, someone can hack my car. What happens is I'm one day in a highway, and in a curve, in the turn of in a rainy day, in a turn of the road, someone through my GPS sees that I'm in a turn of road at that moment, and it blocks my brake instantly. So, and my car suffers an accident. I go over out of the road and so on. I can be killed. So the autonomous systems generate or coordinated by artificial intelligence. We can have these systems do marvelous things, but also terrible things. So I'm a bit afraid of, I think that we must have some kind of regulation in some of these new technologies that derive from 4.0. So about globalization, nothing to be done. But 4.0, I think we must be careful about some of these more technologies that are wonderful, but that can have very negative outcomes. or not concerned. One thing, free trade. Of course, governments can limit trade and have, because free trade is about decreasing and dismantling trade barriers of the past. So protectionism is considered a thing of the past. And that is absolutely important for developing nations, because developing nations did not have good access to the rich countries. Now, everyone can have access to the rich or poor country. That is very fundamental for the global growth. So I think that we should not in my opinion, we should make the market free as much as possible, as quickly as possible. But, there are always some companies and some countries that think, no, we need some kind of protectionism for our companies and so on. And for limited times of limited periods, I think that it may make sense in a specific country to protect this or that company to give them time to reconvert, reformulate, and become competitive in a new scheme. Okay, but only in temporary terms, because I think protectionism is bad in the long term.
But, okay, thank you so much, Mr. Jodha. I'll request Mr. Bhattacharya to share his point of view now.
Thank you, Mr. Samanto. First of all, I would like to thank you, Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industries, to invite me here. This is really a pleasure, and this is I think very timely topic. I must say, globalization, because now that we are opening up after the pandemic, the globalization becomes a very important aspect in all of our lives, right? What I want to talk about is, my tryst with globalization a little bit, and then moving on to what we are doing at PharmaQuant. So first, I heard the word when I was in class 8, and I'm talking about 1991 when Manmohan Singh opened up the economy, and the whole, any newspaper that I opened was filled with discussions on how that globalization is going to do for us. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? So there's a bad, good, and the ugly story, everywhere was talking about. And there was one school of thought, and that drew my attention, who are very hopeful and upbeat about globalization. And then they talked about how the globalization is going to help India to grow. The rest of the history is, written all over the place. I see it is the reverse way. Right? The way I see it is the reverse way. So what has been happening in the very first round of globalization was this big companies who are based out of US, Europe, they started coming into the, India, because they saw India as a good market, access to talent pool, access to resources, access to, sort of several other things that brought them here. So that was the very first wave of the globalization, right? That's how I saw it when I was very young teenagers, right? We would read every other day that so-and-so company coming and opening, their presence in India. I think what is happening now, in my mind, globalization 4.0 is a little bit reverse, right? And I'll explain why am I saying this. So if you look at a company like PharmaQuant, we only started in 2019. That's how, that's when we incepted. We only 3 years ago, and we had two very struggling years during pandemic period. But we have developed tremendously. We work with global pharmaceutical companies, help them launch drugs in Europe and US market. So from the day one, we had a business portfolio which was very global in nature, right? So globalization was already an aspect of our business from the day one. What we have done is we have used that and leveraged that opportunity to acquire more and more knowledge and expertise on the global market. And we have gone on the reverse track, right? So we started in Kolkata, India, but now we have managed to open an office in Dublin, Ireland as well. So there is a PharmaQuant affiliate organization, as we speak, was set up in the month of April 2022, right? So, and this is really the case. Often the case is that there is a company which starts in Europe and US, and then they start their presence in India. We are trying to turn the table, and we're saying that we will start here in India, and we'll go to Europe and US for a bigger market, right? That's one. And second is that, and how we are sort of getting the confidence in that, the way we are getting the confidence is that the the clientele that we work with, they are some of the top 20 pharmaceutical companies. They have the resources, they have the options to work with the consulting firms, saying based out of London or based out of New York or based out of anywhere in the world. They have the resources. But they choose to work with PharmaQuant not because we are cheap. They want to choose to work with Pharmaquant because we can deliver the quality that an international agency can deliver. I cannot, obviously I cannot disclose all the details, but there are several work that comes our way, which is developed by a firm sitting in UK or in US, and that comes to us, and we quality check them, we review the work, and we give comments on them, and then those comments are incorporated by our clients into the work. So the way I think we are poised is that we are demonstrating already, and this is not with Pharmaquant, I think this is happening with many of the Indian companies, right? They are already delivering the international quality, and they're delivering the international quality. They're saying very proudly that this is what we are good at. This is where we are at par with other international companies, and we have a very good domestic presence, and we are going to go global. And many small firms, and Mr. Jodha also brought this up, that how the small firms, how the resources that 20 years back were not available. And yes, we have the resources now. We have the resources now. Without those resources, Pharmaquant would not have been able to go global. But we have been able to do because we had access to the resources, we had access to the talent pool in Europe. We have access to the talent pool in US. Now I'm sitting in Kolkata, but some of my contractors are sitting in Europe and US, as we speak. And this is very, very sort of the existence of the tool has made this possible, where even a firm sitting in Kolkata can dare to dream to have an office opened in Ireland. So that's my version of, that's how I see the globalization 4.0.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Bhattacharya, for your point of view. I have a question for you. Since you are from the pharma industry, how do you think has globalization helped or impacted the overall clinical trials process, actually?
It's a very good question.
If you could just throw some light on that.
Absolutely. That's a very good question. And I was looking at one of the market reports that came handy to me. And one of the growth factor that is fueling the growth in the pharma services, and there are many Indian companies who are into this. This is and this is being fueled by the factor that the clinical trials across the world has increased manifold, right? And many of these clinical trials are, increased in manifold because we are now able to diagnose diseases early. We have new treatment mechanism of actions available with us. For example, something like a gene therapy. We have access to the nanotechnologies. These are currently developed. We have new biotechnologies available in the market. So with the presence of these new technologies coming into the picture, with the advancement of the information technology, I think what has started happening is that it is now fueling number of increased clinical trials, number of the drugs that are in the pipeline, number of drugs that are going to be sort of launched in next few years. So the overall activity on the pharma side has really gone up manifold if I compare to say 15 or 20 years back. And I think that is fueling the growth. So my take on this is that in the next 5 to 10 years, you are going to see many more clinical trials happening in ex-US and ex-EU location, right? The focus is shifting. Many of my clients come to the call and, they talk about China as a market. They talk about Southeast Asia as a market. They talk about, India and other emerging economies as a market. They said that, see, we have sorted out the Europe and US market. We understand that market. We know what we can do there. What we do not know is what we can do in China market, what we can do in this emerging market, right? So you are going to see manifold increase in clinical trials on these ex-US and ex-Europe location.
Okay, great. So is it also helping the adverse event reporting and all these post-release process also?
See, pharmacovigilance has always remained a challenge, right? Has always remained a challenge for many reasons, and probably it will need another session to discuss about what are the challenges with pharmacovigilance. But just to, put it in a very short way, I think what we are trying to, the challenge was having a network, having a system which can help us get the adverse events data very quickly. I think with the advancement of the technology, with the advancement of the smartphones, this is enabling all the more and more. And people are, as we speak, people are focusing and researching on that how can we really solve those pieces? Can we can we give patients access to some sort of tool on their smartphones so that they are able to communicate about the adverse events much better, and we have a much better mechanism in place for pharmacovigilance. So there are several works that are currently in progress, and I believe in next 10 years or so, many of these many of the things that are challenges today, we should be able to solve it in next 10 years time or so, if not earlier.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much. So, Professor Sarkar, you have been involved with the government and many of the policy formations actually. So I would like to hear your point of view and your take on this topic actually. Thank you, Mr. Bhattacharya.
Thank you so much.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the invite. I will speak on globalization, but from a slightly different angle. I will talk about the constraints on globalization, not the technological constraints. Technology is improving every day. And we know that it's, the world has become a much smaller place than it used to be. But be that as it may, there are certain socio-economic problems which can impose constraints on globalization. And I will talk about that. In fact, the wave of globalization that started in the 1980s and was very much there in the 1990s and the first decade of the new century sort of took a back seat after that. Countries, especially the United States, was a little bit hesitant about globalization. Earlier on, you asked a question on regulations. Regulations are internal. When a government chooses some regulation in a democratic setup, that must be showing up the will of the majority of the people. So there are restrictions, some restrictions on globalization, economic restrictions, I mean, and I will try to point out why those restrictions are there. You see, the main problem is that globalization, it's a great thing. If you look at the aggregate, it's going to improve profitability, income, employment, and so on. But globalization does not impact everyone in the same way. And that is the core of the problem. If you start with the United States, what happened was that after globalization, capital started flowing out of the country. So just take the auto industry, for example. The producers found it more profitable to produce elsewhere, in Mexico or in Malaysia or in some other place where labor was cheaper. So capital flew out of the country, leading to a loss of employment within the country, a domestic loss of employment. So Americans who were employed in the auto industry lost their jobs. And, some of them had to work in places like Kmart or Walmart, and their whole existence was in question. So that is the, reason why globalization was sort of facing kind of opposition from within. So later on, when Trump came to power, there were restrictions on globalization. But, if we try to understand why Trump came to power, there was a solid, some people at least supported him. And that support came from this kind of fear of losing jobs. So it's a practical thing that I'm talking about. For a country like India, China is somewhat different because, China still does not have a democracy. But for a country like India, where after all the government has to worry about what is happening to most people, globalization, if you just look at the data, just the raw data, from 1950 to let's say 80, in India, growth rate was low. Growth rate of per capita income as well as growth of GDP was low, but inequality gradually was coming down. From 1980 onwards, let's say from 1980 to 2015, there's an excellent work by Chancel and Piketty on the effect of on income distribution in India. So from I'm just quoting their figures from 1980 to 2015, growth rate increased in a spectacular manner. However, there was increase in inequality as well, a marked increase in inequality. So, given that, some people are benefiting from globalization more than the others, and that is creating a problem for globalization to come to a consensus about globalization. If everyone had benefited equally, there wouldn't be any problem. But if a significant portion of the population is left out, because there could be various reasons, because they are not educated enough, because they are not technically sound, and so on and so forth, then these people, they are going to resent globalization. So the point is that in order to have globalization in a manner without any hindrance, let's say, we need to address these domestic problems. The domestic problems are of income distribution. And it's a fact that globalization so far has led to an adverse income distribution, a rise in inequality. So one has to, globalization is a great force, I have no doubt about that. But in order to make it implementable, governments all over the world has to pay attention to the problem of inequality. Thank you very much. I'll just stop there.
So thank you, sir. I think that's very insightful. We always tend to look at the positive sides and ignore the negatives. But yeah, I do understand, and absolutely, every phenomena which happens should take care of both the positive and negative, actually. And whether it's addressing, you don't want a very developed country to outsource their environmental problems to a third world and then say that we are doing very well. So we have to take care of the inequalities, not just in the economic terms, but also in the environmental and social impacts of it, and take care of that, actually. So definitely, that's a very, very valid point of view, and the other side of the coin that you just pointed out. So that's really good. We had a few questions from the audience, which I'd like to read out, and some of it you have already, all of you have already answered. There's one question, maybe, sir, Professor Sarkar, you may be able to answer better. What are the opportunities in Indian service sector? Will it also help the manufacturing sector? That's a That's a question some of our audience have asked actually. So, what's your thought on that?
In India, we had a peculiar sort of pattern of development. We just from agriculture, we went straight to the service sector, sort of avoiding manufacturers. Now, of course, services have a huge potential, but it has potential only for those who are, relatively educated, who are relatively privileged, who are relatively technically sound. Manufacture is one which employs a lot of, relatively less educated people. So I think we have to seriously consider manufacturing from the employment generation point of view. But not only that, on a deeper, if you just get into it, if you get into the deeper aspect of the problem, unless you create jobs, a policy will not be sustainable. So we have to, services are fine. Services have a lot of potential, but we have to think about manufacturers. There is no reason why India cannot compete in manufacturers in the international market. If Bangladesh can, why can't we? Bangladesh is doing extremely well in terms of garments, for example. Mm-hmm. So why can't we do that? I mean, we should go for manufacturers.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. Mr. Jodao, I have a question, or rather an observation I have had recently. I read an article that, Mercedes-Benz has decided to de-robotize some of their plants. Unlike most of the other car-making companies, they have decided to de-robotize their plants because, most of these large car manufacturers have very specialized plants. So one plant producing X type of car, the other plant producing Y type. So all their robots were all made according to that. And when the demand pattern changed, it was very difficult to overhaul the overall factory and change the robots in that factory. So they decided to go more manual, reduce the number of robots that they are using, which is completely on the other way car manufacturing works actually. So do you see any trend like that in the industry as you have been involved with, Mr. Jodao? What's your observation?
No, I don't think that will be a trend because automation and more and more with the big data, a lot of data, even inside one specific industry, will allow more accurate artificial intelligence solutions and so on. So I think that the trend will go on with automating and so on. But of course, automation or digital or technology is not a dogma. This is not a religion, and we must have intelligent approach on a case-by-case basis. So, of course, in many cases, although it is not a trend, but in many cases, we may, in our homes, because our homes will be able to have many things automated and so on, and connected and so on, we must be able to have the wisdom, the good sense to see what is preferable in a specific situation, to automate or not automate. Because in some cases, we must have a customized and very flexible way of intervening on the output of something of a device or some the behavior of a network or whatever. So it is not a religion. I remember that I had one professor in university in the United States that had a principle. Oh, digital. What can go digital? It must go digital. And I didn't agree because that cannot be a religion. In some cases, if it is not more profitable, more efficient, and so on, more flexible, we should not do that. Take that step. Usually, we'll do that. I remember just one thing. Sorry, there was once years ago. I was meeting for a chat at a coffee house. The deputy chairman of a university in Europe, and we were talking, and we decided, oh, let's talk on let's say Monday, and he said, oh, okay, I will put this in my agenda. So he took his laptop, his laptop, put in on top of the table, opened the laptop, waited for that to start working, and then he typed meeting Mr. Shura on Monday, and so on. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense, because I take a small. We are in the digital world, but it is more efficient that I take a small paper meeting and so on Monday and put in my pocket. So we must keep common sense. So usually this increases, digital increases, automation and so on, increases productivity, decreases prices and so on. But in some cases, that is not the case. And we must be cold about that. So this is not rational. So let me go back to manual and so on. That's perfectly intelligent.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bhattacharya, what's your point of view on telemedicine, which is picking up nowadays a lot, and these small IoT devices that people are using instead of all invasive tests that are being done? You know, you have small IoT devices which look at your eye and it gives you the results. So what is your point of view or quick thoughts on that, actually?
Thank you. I am also mindful that we are at the very fag end of the meeting, so I'll keep my answer very short, very short.
Okay.
I'm very upbeat about digital health and telemedicine because I think they have huge potential. A lot of Indian startups are working on them, and I'll not be surprised if 10 years down the line you see an Indian brand making around the world. Already in the world, every third vaccine is Indian vaccine. Right, we are the largest vaccine manufacturer in the world. Every third vaccine is a Indian vaccine. So if you become an Indian brand becoming popular, across the world on digital health or on telemedicine, it's not very surprising. It's not going to be very surprising. So that's where I'll stop. Thank you so much for the questions and for the time.
Thank you so much. I know this is a very interesting topic, and I can go on and on and on asking questions. So thank you so much. What I understand is, while globalization is a very, very good thing, but it should not be only about profits, actually. It should be it should be taking care of the social needs. It should be used more intelligently and also implemented where it is needed, not just because we have to do it. So thanks to all the speakers, thanks to Bengal Chamber for giving this opportunity. I really appreciate that, and thank you once again. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we will go off stream now. The next online will start in a couple of minutes' time. The session is on digitization of MSME ecosystem and startup scaling. Are we off stream?